Well, that's right, your wife, right? Okay.
Oh, sorry. 10:02 on the courtroom clock. The record should reflect that we are taking case 16-CRI-187, styled State of Ohio versus Shawn Grate. And in this matter is before the court. The sentencing record should reflect that Mr. Grate is present in the courtroom, represented by trial counsel Robert H. Whitney and R. Rolf Whitney. Appearing on behalf of the State of Ohio is Ashland County Prosecuting Attorney Christopher Tennell and Assistant Prosecuting Attorneys McNamara and Weaver. The record should reflect that prior to going on the record in this matter, the court has received and reviewed a victim impact statement. There is only one victim impact statement received. There is no PSI in this case. None was requested by defendant. And at this time, Mr. Whitney, is there anything you'd like to offer on behalf of Mr. Grate before the court proceeds with sentencing?
No, Judge, hearing such as this, I think sometimes what's left unsaid is better than what might be said. So thank you, sir, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Grate, you have an opportunity to make a statement or provide some elocutions or anything you'd like to state this morning.
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Okay, please speak up and stay seated, please.
All right. Well, today's a good day, mainly for all of you guys and myself. Hope we could just move on from all this. I don't know exactly, I can't say I'm normal, but, I know right from wrong. And mainly, just if I cause any hate, bitterness, and then all of any of you, you can work on that. I ask you to maybe forgive me. Find in your heart someday, I know not today, but someday. And just move on from this life. And may justice be served today. That's most important. Elizabeth, Stacy, and Lori, thank you for all your time. And this mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to hear this, okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grate. Mr. Tennell or Mr. Weaver, you're shifting. Anybody offering anything on behalf of the State of Ohio?
Your Honor, the State of Ohio will, although we'll defer our comments until after presentation of victims. Several victims have wished to address the court.
Okay. And did counsel receive a copy of the victim impact statement that the court received in review?
We did, Judge. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
I believe Scott Adams wishes to address the court, Your Honor. Oh. Okay. Curtis Stanley.
State your name for the record, Mr. Stanley, and then you just make your statement.
My name is Curtis Stanley. I'm Stacy's son. I've been waiting a long time to see you, man. All the stuff you said about her, the note you wrote me, I was kind of upset. You wrote me a note and lied about the whole thing. I sat here and watched everything you've done, and you asked for forgiveness, and I tell myself, hey, I can't even do it, and I can't even lie about it. I can't forgive you for that, You made her out, what you said about her. She's not that kind of person. As you can see, man, I got a bunch of people out here, a bunch of people sitting outside of these rooms that all loved her, man. You took my mom, my daughter's grandmother, all that stuff. And, I can't get that back. And for you to say the stuff she did, man, she wasn't like that. She gave you a ride home that night. She didn't need your help. She had a bunch of family. There's a guy there. because people care about her. She was that kind of person when you went around her, she'd help you. You know, you took that. You know, I had to live with it every night. Same thing. You know, you made it out easy in my eyes. It's pathetic. Because we were on your ass looking for you and everything else for my mom. You know, to make sure she was okay. And I know you knew. And I knew you knew who I was when I walked in here the first day. You know, I'm not going to give up on her. You deserve what you get. You know, and every bit of it, and what comes to you inside that place. But that ain't going to bring the fact that she's not here, you know. I'm never going to get that back. You know what hurts me most is my daughter's not going to get to know her. I did, and so did these guys. You know, she's in a better place, but you didn't deserve to take her for the reasons you took her and the things you did to her. You know, that's not right. And then what's pathetic is I came to see you at the jail. You didn't have enough balls to come in the room to see me, to talk to me eye to eye. You know, I'm standing here talking to you face to face, looking at you. You know, what you did, you don't scare me, you don't scare any of these guys here. You did wrong. You know, and that doesn't make you a man because you killed these women. Those women deserve to live. You didn't have the right to choose when they were going to go. And I just want you to know, and everybody else here does too, that she had family that cared. And so does those other people did. You know, you didn't just hurt her, you hurt everybody else in that process too. And now the only thing I got to do is to make sure that I hold my brother up and the rest of these guys up because of something you did wrong. You live with the punishment, but you don't live with the hurt. You can say you hurt, but man, you killed 5 women. You don't hurt for that. That's evil. You know, that one is a different, but you killed 5, so you meant to do that. You were looking for that. I'll probably never forgive you. You know, but I wanted to tell you, man, you killed a wrong woman. That was a great woman you killed. She meant a lot to me and my brother and everybody else. And just to stand up here and look at you, that's hard enough for me to do. Because like I said, I've wrote you numerous times. They put orders on you, can't talk to you. I feel like sometimes you enjoy this. You know, and I don't want you to get the death penalty. I hope you get life in prison. The death penalty is the easy way out for you. But hey, it is what it is, you know. But I just wanted to let you know that everybody back here does care. And you made a mistake. And you will pay for it. You know, and I don't even know what else to say to you right now. It's hard to even look at you. You know, but the biggest thing is my daughter's only 5, man. She got to know her a little bit, but not even old enough to remember that stuff. You know, like I said, she gave you a ride home, man. That should have been good enough for you just to let her go. But the shit you said about her was wrong. That's not true. She always cooked for everybody, always had family events, was always there for everybody. Never once was she wrong to anybody that I've ever met. And for you just to judge her, all that stuff, you don't even know who she was. You know, none of you don't even know nothing about her. You know, you made the judgment about her because of what you assumed. She wasn't the kind of woman that wanted 1,000 guys or nothing like that. She was happy by herself. She had my brother and myself and her family there, always with us. I got videos with her doing things with us all the time. My mom called me 100 times a day, man. That's how I knew something was wrong. When she quit calling me every day for the last 3 or 4 days when she went missing, I knew right then, that next day, that she was missing. You know, we didn't stop looking for you. We were right next door to your house, the one you were found in that next night. I was right on top of you. And I wouldn't have quit till I found her, and neither were these guys. You know, it's just pathetic that you got an easy way out of this, in my eyes. But I have nothing else to say to you, and I just hope that you get what you deserve in there, you know. And, you know, that's what's really sad is you left You hurt my family, but you also hurt your own home, man. You got a son and everything else. That should have at least crossed your mind. Made a miserable mistake that you're going to live with the rest of your life, and so is your son and everybody else because of the mistakes you made. You know, and for Lori to get up there and talk to you, that was good on her. I'm glad she faced you because you're evil, man. And I felt bad for her. You know, you took advantage of that woman and my mother like they were nothing. That doesn't make you a tough guy. It just makes you evil. You know? Because that lady didn't mean nothing to you, man. She was reading the Bible verses to you and everything else. You knew she was a good woman. And you knew Elizabeth was too, and my mother. You just knew they were weak in a sense, and you took advantage of that, which was wrong. You know, wrong, man. And it's pathetic because you hurt everybody, not just yourself, but you hurt everybody in these rooms and outside these rooms. It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them. It affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young. I had to go in there and pick a casket out, and you made it to where I couldn't even have an open casket to say goodbye to her, which is pathetic. You done took it. My last conversation with it was 3 minutes about a fucking tire. That was it, man, a tire. I didn't get to tell her goodbye. I didn't get to kiss her goodbye in that casket or nothing. You took all that from me at a young age, man. I don't know, you don't know what it feels like to bury somebody like that. It means something to you. I mean, you made me a stronger man, but it was pathetic the way you did it. Because that hurts. I have to live with it every single day. That doesn't just disappear, man. 2 years go by, I still feel the same as I first woke up. And sometimes I think it's a dream, because I try to call her occasionally. But I'm going to sit down and let everybody else talk, because there's plenty more to hear. I just want you to think about that and see that she was cared for, that she wasn't some woman off the streets that nobody cared about, because that's not true. And she wasn't a piece of trash. She had herself together. But I hope you get what you get.
Again, sir, please state your name for the record, then you may make your statement in a narrative fashion.
My name is Scott Adams. My sister Stacy was born on April 21st, 1973. You decided to take her life on 9/8/16. You're a monster, dude. A monster. You will not hurt anybody again in public because of the direction you're headed. There's so much anger built up inside of me toward you. My sister, all growing up throughout her life, always had a big smile, a helping hand, everything, one of the nicest people you ever meet. And who are you to decide to take her life and the other women? A monster is what you are. You deserve much more than you'll ever get in your entire life. You're headed to a place where I hope they give you at least half of what you deserve for the rest of your natural born life. Today, somebody else holds your life in their hands. How's that feel to you, dude? Because you had no concern about my sister when you decided to take hers or anybody else that you kept, killed, raped, a flipping animal. You're pitiful. A monster. You don't even deserve bread, food, water, nothing. Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes. Burn in hell. Your Honor, my name
Please, sir,
is...
first state anybody that's coming forward, please state your name first for the record before you make your statement or read your statement.
My name is Nick Adams.
Thank you,
Your
sir.
Honor, I'm Stacy's brother.
the men that kidnapped, raped, and murdered my sister, and Elizabeth, as well as other women, has placed our families on an emotional roller coaster. Time and time again, he has re-victimized our families for 8 days. We had to listen and look at the photos of my baby sister and of Elizabeth. We listened as he described my baby sister head banging off the stairs as he drug her down the steps. Threw her in the basement and covered her up under trash, thinking that's the type of woman she was. I'm here to tell you that my sister was not trash. And she did not deserve to be treated as trash. My sister was a kind person, always willing to help somebody. My sister was a very loving person. She loved her family with all of her heart. My sister was a generous person, always willing to give someone without something, without saying or expressing anything in return. Never in my life have I felt such hatred towards a human being, if you want to call yourself one. Stacy loved to cook and was always willing to help somebody. Unfortunately, her willingness to help others is what ultimately caused her death by giving you a ride home. My sister was always cooking, cleaning, working, and making memories with her family. September the 9th, 2016, a father lost his daughter. Parents should never bury their children. Children should bury their parents. Siblings lost a sister. Sons lost their mother. A grandchild lost her grandmother that she will never know. Numerous nieces and nephews lost their aunt. Richard, it's my middle name. That's what my sister used to call me. There's 5 of us children. We're a very close family. Stacy always made me apple crisp. It was my favorite. Every time I go to her house, I say, "Hey sis, make me up an apple crisp." She always made everybody feel welcome. You go to her house, she would feed you. If you was tired, you could stay the night. The defendant may have killed my baby sister, but he'll never kill our memories like he did my sister. I want justice. Justice for me is the death penalty. My sister Stacy and the other women deserve justice for the heinous acts he has committed. the defendant has taken their lives.
Over the last several weeks, you've heard a great deal of information about my sister. The things the defendant said about my sister were not the truth. Today I'm speaking about my sister and the person she was, the person I love, and the person that is deeply missed by her friends and family. Stacy was my little sister. We were only 11 months apart in age. Stacy was not simply my sister, she was my best friend. My life has not been the same since she was murdered and so selfishly stolen away. I miss my sister every day. I miss her smile, her laughter, and her daily interactions with our family. I spoke to my sister every day, sometimes many times a day. That hole that has been left in my heart and my family's heart is massive. Stacy was a generous, kind, loving person, always willing to help others, especially her family. Stacy would often have family dinners at her home. She loved to cook, always making so much food every time. Stacy had the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. Taking care of others, that's what she did. Stacy loved her two boys, Curtis and Corey, more than anything in this world. Curtis and Corey are what they call mama's boys. Their hearts are also broken, and they have been struggling with anxiety and depression for the last 2 years. I have always spent a lot of time with the boys, even more so since their mother's passing. To see them struggle day to day over their mother's murder is heartbreaking. Like the boys, my father, Joe Stanley, has suffered a great deal since Stacy's passing. My dad's health has deteriorated severely since his daughter's murder. Shortly after Stacy's murder, my dad had a massive heart attack followed by a massive stroke. This has left him partially paralyzed and unable to do many things in life that he previously enjoyed. My dad is unable to drive, play his guitar, ride his motorcycle, or even go for a walk. Rarely does he leave his house. Enjoying life was something my dad and sister both did before you. My brothers as well all struggle daily. Some of them had to start taking medications as well to help. You do not know my sister. Stacy is not the whore you claimed her to be. Stacy was a kind woman. You took advantage of her kindness. Ultimately, this resulted in her being in a situation that left her in a vulnerable position. I have no forgiveness for you in my heart. I have only hate and despise in my heart for you. You deserve nothing except to die a painful, torturous death. You claim to be a man of God. The Bible says, "Thou shalt not kill." I believe you will burn in hell with your eyes wide open for eternity. You are not crazy. You, sir, are an evil man. You should expect no mercy from this family and deserve no mercy from this court. I believe the court will serve justice now on your life here on earth, but eventually you will get what you deserve. And that day cannot come soon enough. We will be there on that day you meet your Maker, celebrating your death for what you have done to my sister and these other women. So on that fateful September day when you decided to play God, It was not only Stacy's life that was taken, all of our lives were taken in some way. Forgiving you taking my sister away, it's not an option. Not a single day goes by that I am not thinking about Stacy and missing her more than these words could ever express. I am pleased the jury recommended the death penalty. The penalty provides a specific ending to your life. Ideally, this punishment would be my choice. The death penalty is also something my dad wants, and he hopes he lives long enough to see you put to death. Justice for me at this point is death as soon as possible. I do not know which sentence would make this happen the quickest. A part of me thinks the death penalty is too humane for you. Death at the hands of the state is peaceful, pain-free death. You deserve more punishment than the law will allow. Stacy and Elizabeth suffered begging for their lives. I want you to suffer too. Prison-style justice, like you gave to my sister, would serve you well. I want to give the prosecution table a special thank you for putting the final nail in your coffin. I thank the jury for recommending the death penalty and seeing you for the person you really are. Thank you, Judge, for hearing this case and for your careful consideration in it. Thank you to everyone who has supported our families. Today, this monster will pay for what he has done, and I'm confident it will be with his life. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Stanley, Stacy's little brother. I'd like to tell you about my sister. We were just a couple years apart. It's taken a lot for me not to just come across her at you, bud. Because I'd like to see you do some of the things to me that you did to my sister. Because you wouldn't make it around me, bud. She was a good woman. Everybody loved my sister. You go to her house for Christmas time, she always had a big spread of food to eat on the table, cooked a big meal. You know, she always had a gift for everybody. She wasn't what you described her as by far. I request a death penalty for you as well. I've been locked up. I've seen your kind. I see what they do to you, your kind. So maybe you won't even make it to the needle. You know, I'd like to thank you, Judge, the jury, the prosecution, the detectives that did their job, and all my friends and family out here. They supported us through all this scrap. I have so much here to read, but I can't really do it. You took a lot from us. Like my sister said about my dad. You know, I think you doing that to my sister kind of pushed him over the edge. You know? She needed any help, she'd always call me. The days she needed me the most, I wasn't here, I was working. That's what real men do, they work. They provide for their family. Unlike you, that's something you'll never do. You'll never provide for your daughter or your son ever again. And you'll probably never see him again. And how's that make you feel? Never to hold your kids in your arms, never to kiss your kids goodbye. How does that make you feel? Tell you what, we were so close to you, this house over here, and I guarantee you, if we would have got in that house, if I known that house was there, I would have went in that house. like I had done many other abandoned houses. And if we'd have fucking caught you in there, we'd have killed you ourselves that day. There would have been no justice for Stacy. It would have been served that day. That's all I have to say. Sorry about my language, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Corey Stanley, the son of Stacy Stanley. I'd like to thank everybody here, the judge, the prosecutor, and everybody that's done their jobs, and all the hard work you guys to put into bringing justice to me and my family. It's been a long, hard road. You know, I do suffer from anxiety real bad from the situation, and you know, it's very hard to lose my mom. You know, my mom's never gonna get a walk with me, you know, down the aisle and see me get married and have kids. You know, I'm 24 years old, man. Put your mom to death, you know, burying your mother at 24, it's hard. And you know, my brother, he struggles a lot more than I do. I've come to terms with the situation. I can't change nothing, can't bring her back, and I'm gonna do my best to live my life and enjoy what I got left while you suffer. You don't deserve anything more than what you're gonna get, and it's gonna come. Not if, but when. And like I said, I just like to thank you guys, and you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Your Honor, I'm Judy Griffith.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm Judy Griffith, Elizabeth's mother. You robbed me. You robbed me big time. That was my daughter. My daughter. She was kind to people. She gave a knife set to a woman and said, "Here, this is my tithe to God." Gave a $1,000 bed away. Probably slept on the floor, because that's the way she is. I heard one time needing money for my mortgage. She handed me 76 cents in a manila envelope, a little paper tore up in about the shape of a circle, folded up, taped it. "Here, Mom, this'll cover it." Greater is he that is in me than he that's in the world. You are evil. God tells me to forgive you. And only because he said it, I'll forgive you, but I don't feel it in my heart. And I will say you deserve the death penalty. And that's even too kind, much too kind. You need to see and take a hard look at what you've done and how you would like it if it was done to you. You need to cry out to God and repent. Because if you don't, you're going to hell. And you will not ever see heaven. And like I said, that death penalty is too kind. For what you've done to them, you deserve it back done to you. But God will deal with it. Thank you, Your Honor, for hearing me.
You're welcome.
He's robbed a lot of people. He turned things upside down.
My name's Lloyd Keith Griffith. I'm here to represent my little brother. Elizabeth was his daughter that he dearly loved. he didn't get to spend enough time with her that he so much wanted to. But at the same time, neither did my grandmother, or my mom, which would be her grandmother. I can't say much because if I have a lot of dislike in my heart, I'm trying to stay away from hatred. But I'll tell you, you are a monster. You took from people that nobody's never treated you like this. I don't even understand where you're coming from. Or my little brother. Elizabeth was a sweet Christian girl, and you took to her kindness and killed her. I only got one thing to say to you, pal. It's all between you and the good Lord now. Because your ass is going to hell. Betcha.
My name's Ron Stanley. I'm Stacy's uncle. And very next morning, we knew Stacy was missing. It was like the boys said, without a phone call, within hours, they knew something was wrong. Because that's what kind of mother she was. She was a caring, loving mother to all her family. She had a lot of uncles and cousins. My dad died a couple years ago. He had 127 grandkids and great-grandkids. When this shirt says Stanley Strong, you don't know what you got into. But we grew up in a Christian home. Most of us have went to the altar and asked God to forgive us of our sins. Then sometimes slipped off that narrow way. But Jesus said, what is able, who is able to snatch one of these out of my hand? You know, Paul said nothing. He's persuaded nothing's able to. I prayed that morning when I left home. I prayed to God earnestly. I said, Lord, just as you guided the wise man to Jesus, just as you told the disciple to go over the hill and you'll see a donkey, just tell the man that you have need of it, and he'll give you that donkey. I said, you're an all-knowing God. There's no secrets of him. He's a big God. He can hold all the world's water in the hollow of his hand. That's who you're going to face. And I said, God, lead us to Stacy. I know you're able. You said, whatsoever we ask, it shall be given. You know, and God blessed us to find that car before the sheriff did. We found that car. And we were, like my nephew Joe said, we were right on your trail. I had talked to all the women around here. I knew Lauren was missing, and I knew your name. I knew the camera didn't catch no video at BP before the sheriffs or the cops did. I knew Lauren's name. I knew people that you've been running with, and how you manipulate the weak. And let me tell you something about what the Lord says. These girls were Christian girls. The Bible says it'd be better for you to have a chain bound around your neck and cast into the depths of the sea. And I'd like to be there to be the one to kick you off that boat. But first, I'd love to see you go through the suffering and the pain that you enjoyed so much. The morning that Lauren made that phone call, you've been staying in that house. And when you looked out the window, did you notice Stacy's picture on the laundromat door? It was looking right back at you. Did you see it? It wasn't about 20 yards from you. Did you see us parking and searching? I think you're a liar. Because it was all over your house, all around it. Because your son Corey was banging on that door the night before the sheriff's come in. We was meeting there, could have threw a rock and hit your house that you were squatting in. We was there about 7:45. At 7 o'clock, we were going in the house. That was the next place we was going. And I knew all about you, and I had a big suspicion that you had done something horrible. And I'm a tree trimmer. I had 2.5 gallons of chainsaw gas in the back of my truck. And do you know anything about the picture of Satan in the old buildings over there? I heard you were staying in there for a while. Did you see that Satan picture in there? Did you draw that? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's got 3 sets of eyes in it, and every eye has a different symbol in it. I believe you painted that picture. But anyways, you can thank God for this family here, because it saved your life and Lauren. Because I believe we put enough pressure on you that you didn't sleep much. People banging on your door, seeing 60 people running around, looking under rocks, looking all through that building over there. I had to take a fishing pole and put a treble hook on it, looking in the elevators over there before. Water, looking for it. But you should thank God. I can tell you this. The Bible says we're all a vessel. Whatever is in that vessel is what you are. You are what you eat, kind of, you know. What you desired and put in your vessel, pure evil, of the devil, straight from the pits of hell. There's hope for you. There's only one sin unforgivable. That's blaspheming against the Holy Ghost. I believe everybody at the white throne judgment. Well, I'll see you there. I'll see you there. I see every person here there. We'll all face that judge. If you got any kind of spiritual thing about you, you better drop to your knees and beg to God to forgive you. Because it's not this. God made you good. He made the body good. He gave you the choice what to put in this mind, which way to go. And you choose to go the wrong way. But what life you took wasn't just one life. Just like I said, my dad had like 127 grandkids and great-grandkids. And out of all those lives, Stacy was a part of their lives. Like they said, she was a caring, giving mother, niece, aunt, cousin, second cousin, third cousin. Our family's big and tight. We help each other and give to one another and do what we can for one another. So what you did wasn't one life, okay? You did way, way more than that. Yeah, I don't even think you can grasp in your mind what you have done to this family. But I can tell you this, through the grace of God, we will get through it. And it'll make us stronger. It'll make us a tighter family. I believe this death sentence is too easy for you. I believe you just need dropped right off in the midst of them. But I would like to see them not have their total way with you, but have their way with you for a long time, day in, day out. Let you beg a little bit. Let you get that fear. How you choke. Remember how you said you choked Stacy out and then you let loose over and let her get her breath back for a little while. That's what you need done. Whatever happens today with what they're going to do with you, I just laid it in God's hands. That God's will be done. And it will. You might have thought you won something there. You might have thought you won a little battle there, but let me tell you, buddy, God has won the war. He's Alpha Omega. He's the beginning and the end. What you did was simple-minded, compared to a big God like that. You were totally misled in what you had going through your head. Thanks, Judge.
You're welcome.
Sabrina Culler, cousin of Elizabeth Griffith. Your Honor, and Shawn, Elizabeth wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was my cousin. She was my family. Liz was a beautiful soul who helped so many people in her church as well as the community. She had such a big heart and shared so much love. And you took her away from all of us way too early. Liz still had a whole life ahead of her. You took every chance that she had to have a family of her own. She'll never get to experience having a child or watching her grandchildren. Her mother will not have that opportunity to be a grandmother and a great-grandmother to beautiful little angels. You say that you freed her? Are you God? Did God tell you to take her? What exactly did you free her from? You say that you're not normal. Your childhood was rough? I bet you there's a lot of people in here that didn't have the perfect upbringing either. And we're not murderers. We're not sadistic murderers. We're loving people with loving families. You can hide behind whatever excuse you have, but your words are empty. They have no meaning. I feel you should get the death penalty. An eye for an eye. I think we should strangle the life out of you, like you did with Liz and Stacy, and would have done to Lori if she had not gotten to your phone. God was with Lori that day, and he brought you down. You would have murdered Lori, wouldn't you have, if she hadn't gotten to your phone? Lori wouldn't have been the last one either, would she have? No, you're a predator. Small man. You are not big and mighty. Like I said, I hope you picked the wrong person, because you'll be saving us taxpayers a lot of money. My working, hard-earned money. Something that you don't know anything about. You ask for forgiveness? Really? Like any of us would really give you any forgiveness? Was you instructed to say that? Because in my heart, I don't feel that you want forgiveness. Like I said, her mom lost a daughter. Her sister lost a sister. Her uncle lost a niece. We all lost a family member. The church lost a loved one. The community lost a good person. Not just one, but two, almost three. Actually, I feel that you don't deserve to wait on death row. Getting 3 square meals a day, roof over your head, TV to watch, an hour outside in the yard in the sunshine. I think you need to rot in that little cell. That little, 10 by 10 cell? Even that's too big for you. Maybe you should rot in a closet with clothes thrown all over you and then taped up, never ever heard or seen from again. Better yet, maybe our law enforcement can just turn a blind eye and we can just take you outside and hang you from a tree for the whole community to see and to praise.
Amen.
Your Honor, on behalf of our family, we beg and plead with you to uphold what the jury has asked for, and that is the death penalty. And I want to thank you, as well as the jury, the law enforcement, as well as our prosecuting attorneys. And I am so sorry that you all had to see what this evil man did to these beautiful women. I'm sure there are pictures that you guys will never get out of your head, as well as us, or out of our hearts.
My name is Kathy Shea, and I'm a cousin of Elizabeth. It's really hard to stand here and look at you. I heard you ask for forgiveness for the family. You should not be asking that. That is between you and God. If you want forgiveness, you ask Him. We have to deal with this on our own time. If we choose to forgive you, it's because that is what the Lord has asked us to do, and it has nothing to do with you. I've watched a couple programs and saw some things about how you have a certain way of operating, and that is to go after Christian women and act like a Christian to get to them and use that as an advantage for yourself. Everything you did, all the women that I saw, it was the same motive all along. You don't know the true Lord. Otherwise you would not have murdered. You took advantage of these girls. They had a heart that was soft and kind. And you took that from us as well. According to your logic, you say you freed them from whatever flaw that they had. Well, following that logic tree down, where do you fall? I think you're at the top. You are flawed. You're not God. You shouldn't have taken their lives. You're just as flawed as everybody else. So you did not save them from anything. Like I said, following in your logic, you are just as flawed, so therefore you should die to save the world from you. And the jury gave you a recommendation of death. And I would ask the judge to uphold that, please, because according to logic that Shawn Grate has already demonstrated, he falls underneath that rule, that he should die. I also request that you would ask to bypass any appeals that you are allowed to bypass and ask for the needle to be given to you as soon as possible so that these families do not have to look, hear, or see about you ever again.
Amen.
I am a Christian. I believe that God forgives. He doesn't want to see anybody go to hell. I struggle with this right now. So it's in his hands about what happens to you. You've heard my statement. I will deal with that end of it on my part with the Lord. But I think you should die. Sooner the better. Give these families a break from everything. They deserve that. We deserve that. These girls were important people in our lives and in our community. You are not important. May God have mercy on your soul.
Your Honor, standing before this court today for sentencing is a predator. But to draw a parallel to the animal world would be disingenuous. Animals prey on others for survival as God intended. This is very different. These acts were evil. His history and conduct demonstrate his propensities. His nature is such that he poses the greatest risk to reoffend. Not just to continue to commit crimes, but this defendant creates nightmares. The concept of a predator, as the code uses that term, is reserved for the worst of the worst. The state's position as to the weight of the aggravating circumstances versus the mitigating factors is well stated. Obviously, the state agrees with the jury's recommendation that death is the answer for this defendant. As to the remaining counts, the state of Ohio requests that all counts be run consecutive to each other. The code requires the findings in order to do so. The consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime. The consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the offender's conduct and the danger the offender poses to the public. And that at least 2 of the multiple offenses were committed as part of 1 or more courses of conduct, and the harm caused by 2 or more of the multiple offenses so committed was so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of the offenses committed as part of any of the courses of conduct adequately reflects the seriousness of the offender's conduct. All of the counts contained in the indictment and all of the counts that are before this court for sentencing today constitute a course of conduct. There is no sentence, in the state's humble opinion, that would be disproportionate to the harm caused. And we feel that a maximum consecutive term, including death, would adequately reflect the seriousness of the offenses. All of the counts, with perhaps the exception of counts 22 and 23, would clearly constitute the worst forms of the offense. Even count 21, just a simple burglary count on a trailer at Charles Mill, is the worst form of such an F3 burglary, where the defendant trashed a trailer, left feces behind, and deprived Mrs. Molyneux of her last memories of that place with her husband. It pales in comparison to the other worst forms of the offenses that are contained in the facts of this case. But it demonstrates that this defendant's propensity is to exceed the norm. This defendant is supremely deserving of maximum consecutive sentences. Just as Stacy Hicks and Elizabeth Griffith were supremely deserving of life. Just as Jane Doe was supremely deserving of her dignity and security in her person. And even still, just as Tom Molyneux, Pam Miley, and Curtis Connor were supremely deserving of the security of their property. This defendant is supremely deserving of the death penalty. And to be frank, he is the reason the death penalty exists in the state of Ohio. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tennell. Since the court did not receive a pre-sentence investigation report, and since it wasn't evidence that was permissible during the trial of this matter, I'd like to know if you've got the information about the defendant's criminal history prior to coming to Ashland County, because that's not part of the record in this case at this point.
Your Honor, the relevant record, there's a series of misdemeanor convictions throughout his history. What would be instructive for this court to know is a domestic violence misdemeanor prior conviction, a burglary conviction out of Marion County. He was judicially released on that. While on judicial release, he committed the offense of abduction and was returned to prison.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Grate, when imposing sentence, the court must comply with the purposes and principles of Ohio's sentencing statutes with regard to the non-capital charges in this case. The court must consider the overriding purposes being to punish and rehabilitate the offender, protect the public from future crime by the offender and others, using the minimum sanctions that the court determines accomplish those purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources. Court must always consider the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, and restitution. Any sentence imposed should always be commensurate with and not demeaning to the seriousness of an offender's conduct and its impact on any victim. And it should be consistent with sentences for similar crimes by similar offenders, and the court cannot sentence based on offender's race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. With regard to the 2 capital counts, those being counts 1 and 7, that the state elected to proceed on for purposes of sentencing. The provisions of Revised Code 2929.03 apply, in which the court has to engage in a weighing of the aggravating circumstances against the mitigating factors, and then determine an appropriate sentence based on the outcome of that weighing process. I've undertaken and completed, pursuant to Revised Code 2929.03 D3, that independent evaluation of the evidence offered by both parties, as well as the arguments of counsel at the close of trial and the sentencing phase of the trial, for the purpose of determining whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances associated with the aggravated murder of Elizabeth Griffith outweigh the mitigating factors presented to this court, and separately whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances associated with the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, also known as Stacy J. Stanley, outweigh the mitigating factors. In undertaking this task, the court has separately considered and weighed the aggravating circumstances for each aggravated murder against the mitigating factors, and I've separately considered the death sentence in each of the two aggravated murders. I want to make it clear that the weighing process involves solely those aggravating circumstances versus the mitigating factors. The court has not considered the aggravated murder of Elizabeth Griffith itself, or the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, also known as Stacy J. Stanley, as an aggravating circumstance. So what do we have with regard to the aggravating circumstances in count 1? That on or about the period between August 16, 2016 and September 13, 2016, and based on the evidence presented to this court, it appears to be sometime before at least September 8, 2016, you, Shawn M. Grate, committed the aggravated murder of Elizabeth A. Griffith as part of a course of conduct involving the purposeful killing of Elizabeth Griffith and Stacy J. Hicks, also known as Stacy J. Stanley. And Elizabeth was killed prior to the killing of Stacy Hicks, but in a similar fashion during a period of just a few weeks. And you demonstrated in your recorded video interview that your method of killing both Elizabeth and Stacy. And this is all relevant to the first aggravated circumstance of count 1, that the aggravated murder of Elizabeth Griffith was part of a course of conduct involving the purposeful killing or attempt to kill 2 or more persons by the defendant, Shawn M. Grate. Statements that were made here in open court about other individuals don't factor into this decision by this court. The court's only focusing on the aggravating circumstances as they apply to count 1, and then separately the aggravating circumstances as they apply to count 7, count 7. The second aggravating circumstance on count 1 states that the aggravated murder of Elizabeth Griffith was committed while you, the defendant, was attempting to commit, fleeing immediately after committing, or attempting to commit the offense of kidnapping, and the defendant was the principal offender in the commission of the aggravated murder. You, Mr. Grate, admitted to placing your arm around Elizabeth Griffith's neck and preventing her against her struggles to break free from leaving the 363 covert courthouse. You strangled Elizabeth by wrapping your arm around her neck and cutting off the blood flow to her brain. Her body was found in a closet bound with ligatures on both her wrists and ankles, with her extremities pulled behind her back, basically in a hog-tied fashion, with a separate ligature then leading from the wrist to her neck. The closet containing Elizabeth's body was situated in a room where there was also a sofa bed affixed with additional ligatures that could be used to restrain an individual. The defendant admitted to holding a strangulation grip for 3 to 5 minutes, during which time Elizabeth could not escape or regain her liberty and freedom of movement despite her struggles to do so. And you admitted to killing Elizabeth Griffith, tying her up with the ligatures and placing her body in the closet and covering it with the clothes. You're also the admitted principal offender in that aggravated murder. With regard to the aggravating circumstances surrounding count 7, the first one was that the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, aka Stacy J. Stanley, was part of a course of conduct involving the purposeful killing of or attempt to kill 2 or more persons by the defendant, Shawn M. Grate. And on or about the period between September 8 and September 13, 2016, and based on the evidence as to Stacy Hicks, aka Stacy Stanley, appearing to be sometime early in the morning of perhaps September 9, 2016, you committed the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, a.k.a. Stacy J. Stanley, as part of a course of conduct involving the purposeful killing of Stacy and Elizabeth Griffith. Stacy J. Hicks was killed in the same manner as Elizabeth Griffith, through strangulation, and this occurred during a period of just a few weeks. You admitted to both killings and demonstrated in a recorded video interview your method of killing both Stacy and Elizabeth. The second aggravating circumstance associated with count 7 was that the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, a.k.a. Stacy J. Stanley, was committed while the defendant was committing, attempting to commit, or fleeing immediately after committing or attempting to commit the offense of kidnapping and or rape and or aggravated robbery, and the defendant was the principal offender in the commission of the aggravated murder. Again, you admitted to killing Stacy Hicks, a.k.a. Stacy J. Stanley, by physically wrapping your arm around her neck, subsequently placing a ligature around her neck and cutting off the flow of blood to her brain. In the case of Stacy, however, you also made video recordings of your efforts, some of your efforts, to restrain Stacy and to prevent her from leaving the house located at 363's Covert Court. You also made a video recording of yourself in the act of raping Stacy Hicks. You admitted to abducting Stacy, preventing her from leaving the Covert Court residence, and raping her at the Covert Courthouse. You demonstrated in a recorded video interview your method of killing both Stacy and Elizabeth, and Stacy's body, similar in fashion to Elizabeth Griffith's body, was also found with ligatures still attached to her wrists and ankles. You drove Stacy's vehicle to Mansfield to purchase marijuana, and then drove the vehicle to a remote location from where you were situated and abandoned it. Yeah, so you used and abandoned Stacy's vehicle without her permission. The court's also required to make specific findings as to the existence of any of the mitigating factors that are set forth in Division B of Revised Code 2929.04. If one or more of the aggravating circumstances listed in Revised Code 2929.04a is specified and proved beyond a reasonable doubt, the trial jury and later the court shall consider and weigh against the aggravating circumstances proved beyond a reasonable doubt the nature and circumstances of the offense as a mitigating factor, not an aggravating factor, the history, character, and background of the offender, and the following statutory factors. First, whether the victim of the offense induced or facilitated the offense. I find that neither of the two victims in this case induced or facilitated either of the offenses, and there's therefore no mitigating value or weight associated with this statutory factor. Second, whether it's unlikely that the offense would have been committed but for the fact that the offender was under duress, coercion, or a strong provocation. I'm finding that Mr. Grate was not under duress, was not coerced, and was not provoked into committing either aggravated murder offense in this case, and there's no mitigating value or weight associated with this statutory factor. Third, then, is whether at the time of committing the offense, the offender, because of a mental disease or defect, lacks substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality of the offender's conduct or to conform the offender's conduct to the requirement of the law. Finding that Mr. Grate was assessed and found to be competent, that he was not suffering from any mental disease or defect, does have substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality of his conduct, and has substantial capacity to conform his conduct to the requirement of the law if he chose to do so. Dr. Fabian, although he testified that Mr. Grate may be suffering from depression that stems from issues with his mother while growing up and other childhood situations, affirmed in his testimony that Mr. Grate had substantial capacity to appreciate the criminality of his conduct and was not suffering from any mental disease or defect at the time of committing either aggravated murder offense. There's no mitigating value or weight associated with this factor. Next is the youth of the offender. Mr. Grate's approximately 41 years of age, and I find no value or weight associated with this mitigating factor. The next statutory factor is whether Mr. Grate's lack of a significant history of prior criminal convictions and delinquency adjudications. There is no evidence offered at trial or the sentencing phase with regard to Mr. Grate's criminal history, so there's no evidence in terms of this consideration presented at the sentencing phase offered as to Mr. Grate lacking a criminal history as well. In fact, what can be discerned even from Dr. Fabian's testimony, the mitigation expert, as to Mr. Grate's turbulent youth and his episodes of acting out when upset would suggest otherwise. And then, as Mr. Tennell has at least proffered, partially for the record, there is some prior criminal history here that the court is not taking into account when addressing this mitigating factor. I find there's no weight or value associated with this factor. Next statutory factor is if the offender was a participant in the offense but not the principal offender, and the degree of the offender's participation. Mr. Grate is the principal offender in both aggravated murders, so there's not a lesser degree of participation to be considered. This mitigating factor has no weight or value. And then the final statutory factor is any other factors that are relevant to the issue of whether the offender should be sentenced to death. In this area, the court gave extensive consideration to the testimony of Dr. Fabian and Barbara Charter, Mr. Grate's half-sister, including a consideration of the findings and diagnostic conclusions of Dr. Fabian. And I find these factors to be of little weight. I've also reviewed the mitigating evidence for any and all relevant factors as to why Shawn M. Grate should not be put to death as the jury recommended. This court has spent a significant amount of time reviewing the court's notes, the exhibits, the findings and opinions of Dr. Fabian, and the testimony of Barbara Charter. I've considered, in addition to the statutory factors, the nature and circumstances of the offense. The nature and circumstances of each offense bears no mitigating weight or value. And I've considered the history, character, and background of Mr. Grate and all possible mitigating evidence. I've considered on Mr. Grate's behalf that he's 41 years old. He's previously been married and may be the father of children. There's no specific evidence of that. There's been statements that he's got 2 children. But none of Mr. Grate's family members, according to Ms. Charter's testimony, are close. They have little contact with each other as adults, and in fact, there was some reference to the fact that it was difficult to get those persons to even appear or make statements or talk about Mr. Grate. Mr. Grate's mother was primarily a single parent, his parents having divorced. Mr. Grate did spend several years residing with his father, even though his absent mother retained legal custody. And Mr. Grate's mother was often absent from the home as a single parent, trying to hold down multiple sources of employment so she could support her children as that single parent. It was reported that Mr. Grate's mother held high expectations for her children, but was not emotionally supportive. Mr. Grate has described his childhood as rough, and it appears there was dysfunction in the family throughout his childhood. And both his mother and father engaged in multiple personal relationships throughout the course of his life, but there's no documented history of mental health or emotional problems that required any type of treatment or counseling. Mr. Grate did experience some abusive conduct as a young child, but that conduct being between his mother and father, but Mr. Grate was never subjected to physical abuse directly by his father. He was never injured. Mr. Grate was twice held back at a grade at the beginning of his school tenure, but there's no evidence of any disciplinary issues or any IEP being developed on his behalf or any IEP programming required after that. And Mr. Grate apparently excelled as a baseball athlete during his school years. I've exercised exhaustive efforts during a review of the record to find and consider the extent or the existence of any other mitigating factors that the court might consider under that catch-all statutory provision. As the aggravated murder convictions on counts 1 and 7, the court has separately and specifically considered each of the 4 sentencing options in this case, one being life imprisonment with parole eligibility after serving 25 full years, second being life imprisonment with parole eligibility after serving 30 full years, the third being life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and the fourth being death. The court considered the fact that if given a life sentence, Mr. Grate would not be eligible for parole or release until the stated time had been served day for day. The court did not in any way consider any cumulative effect of Mr. Grate having been convicted of multiple counts of aggravated murder or having been convicted of multiple capital murders. But that's it. And for the purposes of the court's consideration of mitigation and sentencing, I read the victim impact statement of Gina Stanley, as well as listened to her today that was provided. I've listened to Mr. Grate's statement that was offered in elocution, as well as the state's position and those other family members who have made statements on behalf of either Elizabeth Griffith or Stacy Hicks Stanley. Courts considered all the mitigating factors presented, which included but were not limited to the nature and circumstances of the offense, the history, character, and background of Mr. Grate, and any other factors that weighed in favor of a sentence other than death. And the court considered that any one mitigating factor standing alone would be sufficient to support a sentence of life imprisonment, and that the cumulative effect of the mitigating factors could also support a sentence of life imprisonment. Court did not limit its consideration to the specific mitigating factors that were described and considered any other mitigating factors that weighed in favor of a sentence other than death. The court is required by statute to state the reasons why the aggravating circumstances the offender was found guilty of committing are sufficient to outweigh the mitigating factors. And in this case, the defendant planned his activities, carried them out with precision, always having a backup plan, it appeared. He engaged in multiple murders utilizing similar methodology. He held both of his victims against their will, thus leading to the kidnapping specification portions of it. He held them prior to killing them. Both cases denied their escape despite their struggles. With Stacy Hicks, the defendant traumatized her prior to killing her by raping her. He then used Stacy's vehicle to purchase illegal drugs, and knowing it could link him to Stacy's disappearance, abandoned the vehicle at a location which was unrelated to the 363 Covert Court address. 2 lives were purposefully taken in a manner that caused the victims to both struggle to regain their freedom and in a manner in which they were, for a time, conscious and aware of what was occurring. The court finds that Mr. Grate's difficult family history and struggles socially do not compare, do not carry nearly as much weight as any single any single aggravating circumstance in this case. Mr. Grate's purposeful killing of 2 individuals he had barely become acquainted with alone carries more weight than all the mitigating factors combined. Mr. Grate's kidnapping and restraint of either victim prior to murdering them alone also carries more weight than all of the mitigating factors combined. After having conducted the required weighing process and analysis, this court finds that the state of Ohio has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances associated with count 1 outweigh the mitigating factors. The court further separately finds that the state of Ohio has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstances associated with count 7 outweigh the mitigating factors. The court therefore concurs with the jury's sentencing verdicts regarding counts 1 and 7. The court therefore finds that a sentence of death by legal injection shall be imposed upon Mr. Grate for the aggravated murder of Elizabeth Griffith as stated in count 1 of the indictment, and a sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Grate for the aggravated murder of Stacy J. Hicks, a.k.a. Stacy J. Stanley, as stated in count 7 of the indictment. Court further orders that each of the death penalties be carried out by appropriate authorities on September 13, 2018, which would be the 2-year anniversary of Mr. Grate's discovery. court also has considered and weighed the statutory sentencing factors that the court must consider and weigh as to the non-capital offenses, and to the extent there's any presumption for a prison sentence associated with any of those offenses that the court still needs to address with regard to the sentencing. The court notes that nothing has been presented to this court to overcome any presumption for imposing a prison sentence where such a presumption is applicable. It's therefore going to be the sentence of the court with regard to count 3, the offense of kidnapping in violation of section 2905.01A3, a felony of the first degree. This was without any specifications, just a straight up one offense that Mr. Grate served 10 years of imprisonment under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. With regard to count 4, gross abuse of a corpse, in violation of section 2927.01B, a felony of the 5th degree, the court orders that Mr. Grate serve 12 months in imprisonment under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. With regard to count 5, the offense of burglary in violation of section 2911.12A3, a felony of the 3rd degree, the court orders that Mr. Grate serve 12 months imprisonment under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. With regard to count 6, the offense of tampering with evidence in violation of section 2921.12A1, a felony of the 3rd degree, the court orders that Mr. Grate serve 12 months in prison. With regard to count 9 of the indictment, the offense of kidnapping in violation of section 2905.01A4, a felony of the 1st degree with specifications. In light of the specification finding in this case, the court is directed to impose a prison sentence that's an indefinite prison sentence of a term to be decided by the court of not less than 10 years to life. Considering the sentencing factors, the nature of the offenses in this case, is the court's sentence with regard to count 9 that Mr. Grate serve an indefinite sentence of imprisonment under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections for a period of not less than 15 years to life. With regard to the count 11 offense of rape, in violation of section 2907.02A2, a felony of the 1st degree with specifications that would again mandate an indefinite prison sentence as determined by the court of not less than 10 years to life. The court orders that Mr. Grate serve an indefinite prison sentence of not less than 15 years to life. With regard to count 12, the offense of aggravated robbery in violation of section 2911.01A3, a felony of the 1st degree, the court orders that Mr. Grate serve 5 years imprisonment under the supervision of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. With regard to count 13, gross abuse of a corpse in violation of section 2927.01B, a felony of the 5th degree, the court orders that Mr. Grate serve a period of incarceration of 12 months. With regard to count 15, the offense of kidnapping in violation of section 2905.01A4, a felony of the 1st degree, again with specifications that would indicate an appropriate sentence of not less than 10 years to life, with the minimum term being determined by the court of not less than 10 years, but could be more. The court imposes a sentence of 15 years to life in prison, an indefinite prison sentence. With regard to count 16, the offense of rape in violation of 2907.02A2, a felony of the 1st degree, the court again imposes an indefinite prison sentence of 15 years to life. With regard to count 17, the offense of rape in violation of 2907.02A2, a felony of the 1st degree, the court imposed, again with specifications, as was count 16, the offense with specifications. The court imposes an indefinite prison sentence of 15 years to life. With regard to count 18, the offense of rape in violation of section 2907.02A2, a felony of the 1st degree with specifications, the court imposes an indefinite prison sentence of 15 years to life. With regard to count 19, the offense of robbery in violation of section 2911.02A3, a felony of the 3rd degree, the court imposes a 12-month prison sentence. With regard to count 21, the offense of burglary in violation of section 2911.12A3, a felony of the third degree, the court imposes a sentence of 12 months. With regard to count 20, am I up to, what count am I up to? I just lost my place. 21.
We missed 14 as well.
We missed 14? Oh, thank you. Well, let's finish off here with count 21, the offense of burglary in violation of section 2911.12A3, a felony of the third degree. The court imposes a sentence of 12 months in prison. With regard to count 22, the offense of burglary, the court imposes a sentence of 12 months in prison, that offense being in violation of section 2911.12A3, a felony of the third degree. And with regard to count 23, the offense of breaking and entering, the court imposes a sentence of 6 months, that offense being in violation of section 2911.13A, a felony of the fifth degree. And since I missed it the first time through, with regard to count 14, the unauthorized use of a vehicle charge in violation of section 2913.03B, a felony of the fifth degree, the court imposes a sentence of 6 months. I'm finding in this case that consecutive service of at least some of the offenses is necessary to protect the public from future crime and to punish the offender. And I'm finding that consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the offender's conduct and to the danger the offender poses to the public. To the extent the court's making this finding, I am permitted to consider the background and the other alleged offenses that the defendant has admitted to, that the court is aware that the defendant has admitted to. And I think that adds into the danger he may pose to the public, as well as the prior convictions referenced by Mr. Tennell. I'm further finding that at least 2 of the multiple offenses in this case were committed as part of 1 or more courses of conduct, and the harm caused by 2 or more of the multiple offenses so committed was so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of the offenses committed as part of the courses of conduct adequately reflects the seriousness of the offender's conduct. And I'm finding that the history of defendant's criminal conduct demonstrates that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime by Mr. Grate. That said, I cannot make that finding that the harm caused by the multiple offenses as they relate to the non-mandatory minimum sentences are so great that those sentences, I guess I disagree with Mr. Tennell as to whether the robbery, the burglary, unauthorized use, and so on mandates consecutive sentencing. However, I do believe it's appropriate for the kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder offenses, and it's going to therefore be the order of the court that the sentences imposed for the aggravated murder counts in 1 and 7 be served consecutively to one another, and to the other sentences that relate to counts 9, 11, 15, 16, 17, and 18. For counts 1, 7, 9, 11, 15, 16, 17, and 18, all of those sentences shall be served consecutive to one another. So what that gets us with is 2 sentences of death and a minimum 90 years to life in prison. As to counts 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 13, 14, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23, those are to be served concurrent to one another and concurrent to the sentences for 1, 7, 9, 11, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Mr. Grate is going to be afforded 640 days of credit towards the 90 years mandatory minimum, I guess, that I'm imposing in this matter, unless he's earlier executed. And he'll receive 1 day of additional credit for time served for each day spent in the Ashland County Jail pending his delivery to the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections for placement. Based on the structure of this court sentence, there is going to be no opportunity to reduce that sentence for the earning of days of credit. So since it's all a mandatory minimum established by the court, in those indefinite sentences. You don't get to knock time off as you would had, say, the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle sentence been imposed consecutively. Arguably, part of that time you could earn credit and have it reduced. With the structure of this court's sentence, there will be no opportunity for those types of credits being earned. In light of this court sentence, I can't find that you have the future ability to be employed or to pay financial sanctions. And quite frankly, I think we'll spend more money than we would receive back trying to collect even the costs that have been expended in this case. So the court's going to waive all fines and costs in this matter. Should you, however it could happen, obtain your release from prison at some point in the future, you would then be subject to a mandatory period of post-release control for 5 years. And that supervision, post-release control supervision, would be conducted by the Adult Parole Authority. Should you find yourself free and subject to post-release control supervision, if you violate the terms of that supervision, the parole board could return you to prison for up to 9 months for each violation of post-release control supervision, with a maximum for multiple or repeated violations of that supervision being capped at 50% of the court's aggregate minimum term, I guess, which would be 45 years. Should you commit a brand new felony offense while subject to post-release control supervision, then you could receive a prison sanction imposed by the court at the time of sentencing for that new felony, with that prison sanction being the greater of 12 months or the time still remaining on post-release control, with that prison sanction then being imposed consecutive to any new prison sentence received on that new felony offense that caused that violation of supervision. For purposes of post-release control, I'm finding you're a resident of Ashland County, and that's kind of by default because this is where you were at the time. There's really no other county of residence, it appears, that you've ever really established what I would consider a permanent residence. So should you ever seek release, you would be supervised, at least initially, in this county. You are going to be classified a Tier 3 sex offender as a result of your convictions in this case, and I'll get to the requirements for registration and verification should you ever secure release from prison in the future and how that would impact. But I do want to advise you first of your appellate rights. You have a right to appeal the convictions as initially, the guilty verdicts as initially determined by the verdict, the sentencing verdicts that the jury rendered. You have an opportunity to appeal the guilty findings that this court made with regard to the sexually violent predator specifications on counts 9 and 10, and you have a right to appeal the sentences that the court's imposing. With the exception of the 2 capital offenses, you have to file a notice of appeal within 30 days. You actually need to do that too with regard to the capital offenses, but there's going to be an automatic review of the capital offenses by the Ohio Supreme Court. That will be a proportionality review that'll occur sometime in the future once everything's shipped to them. But to appeal anything else, you'd still have to file that notice of appeal. Then even as to the capital cases, any notice of appeal needs to be filed within 30 days following the journalization of the court's sentencing order, which should be later today. And that notice of appeal has to be filed in writing. If you're unable to obtain counsel for an appeal, counsel would be provided without cost, and upon request, the court would immediately appoint counsel today as it relates to any appeal for the underlying offenses. Since there are 2 death penalty verdicts being imposed by the court today, I'm going to go ahead and automatically appoint capital case qualified appellate counsel for you. I'm going to appoint Attorney Donald R. Hicks, who has an office in Akron and Summit County as lead appellate counsel, and his address and telephone number will be set forth in the judgment entry. And as appellate co-counsel, I'm going to appoint Attorney Donald M. Gallick as Mr. Hicks' co-counsel. Mr. Hicks has already indicated a willingness to accept the appointment. So I will be confirming that up with him later today, since the court did decide to proceed with the imposition of death sentences on counts 1 and 7. Also, if you're unable to pay the cost of documents you need for an appeal, those documents would be provided without cost. That gets us then to the notification regarding your responsibilities to register as a sexual offender and your reporting requirements and so on. Ms. Carpenter, would you help me out here, since there's no bailiff up here close to the bench?
I'm right here, sir.
This is kind of a standard operating procedure here. Here, these are the two. Actually, let me keep, no, prosecutor, defendant. I think you got your hands switched. Okay, so in front of you, Mr. Grate, is an explanation of your duties to register as a sex offender should you ever secure release from prison in this matter. And those are for violations of 2905.01A3 and 4, and the offenses in violation of Revised Code 2907.02A2. So you're going to be required to register as a Tier 3 sex offender, meaning should you ever secure release from prison, you would be required then to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish residency within 3 days of coming into that county, or if temporarily domiciled for more than 3 days. You're also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of education immediately upon coming into that county. If you establish a place of education in another state, but maintain a residence or temporary domicile, here you are also required to register in person with the sheriff or other appropriate official in that other state immediately upon coming into that state. You're also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of employment if you've been employed. Could we please close the door? Thank you. You're also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of employment if you have been employed for more than 3 days or for an aggregate of 14 days in a calendar year. If you establish a place of employment in another state but maintain a residence or temporary domicile here in Ohio, you're also required to register in person with the sheriff or other appropriate official in that other state if you've been employed for more than 3 days or for an aggregate of 14 days in a calendar year, and employment includes volunteer services. You are required to provide the sheriff temporary lodging information, including address and length of stay if your absence will be for 7 days or more. And after the date of initial registration, you're required to periodically verify your residence address, place of employment, and or place of education in person at the county sheriff's office no later than 10 days prior to your verification date. If you should change your residence address, place of employment, and or place of education, you shall provide written notice of that change to the sheriff with whom you most recently registered and to the sheriff in the county in which you intend to reside or establish a place of employment and or place of education at least 20 days prior to any change and no later than 3 days after any change in employment. If the residence address change is not to a fixed address, you shall include a detailed description of the place or places you intend to stay no later than the end of the first business day. Immediately following the day you obtain a fixed address, you must register with the sheriff that fixed address. And I'll be honest with you, Mr. Grate, I think you're the only individual that I've had in this court in the 7+ years I've been judge sitting at that table who I think that provision would actually apply to, based on your history of establishing residences that don't have a fixed address. You shall provide written notice within 3 days of any change in vehicle information, email addresses, internet identifiers, or telephone numbers registered to or used by you to the sheriff with whom you most recently registered. Because you're classified as a Tier 3 offender, you have to do all these things for your lifetime with in-person verification being required every 90 days. And since I have previously found that you're a resident of Ashland County, you would be expected to register with the Ashland County Sheriff no later than 3 days after your release, if you should ever secure a release from prison. You're going to be there a long time as the court's imposed sentence, and the law can always change, so you can't say it's never possible. But that would be at the Ashland County Sheriff's Office at 1205 East Main Street, Ashland, Ohio, 44805. If you failed to register, failed to verify your residence address at the required times, or failed to provide notice of a change in your residence address or other required information such as the email or internet identifiers, your failure to do so would result in criminal prosecution. You understand all those things I've just advised you of, Mr. Grate?
Yes, Your Honor.
And I would ask that you sign the copy seated in front of Attorney Robert Whitney that's got the sign here sticker on it, and return that to the bailiff, please. And the record should reflect that the court's been returned a copy of the explanation of duties to register bearing the signature of Mr. Grate with today's date of June 1, 2018. The court is going to order, since I received a written victim impact statement, that it be included in the case file but sealed for filing. Anything further to address today? Attorney Whitney?
No, sir, Judge, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Tennell?
Your Honor, only to verify that the court's prior order relating to discussions by the parties with outside sources would expire.
Well, at this point, the case is going to be terminated upon the filing of the court's sentencing order. I'll release all parties from that order. If you feel it needs to be by a separate order, you can submit that order, but the fact that I'm stating it on the record and the case is terminated at this point should, as a matter of law, I guess, dispense with that order, so the parties' counsel are free to speak to whomever they want to speak with at this point, just like the jurors have been released from that obligation.
Thank you.
Anything else, gentlemen?
Push for a second, Judge.
Sure.